In the Marvel Universe, there are a lot of awful ways to meet your end, whether you're a hero, a villain, or simply an unfortunate civilian caught in the middle.
But even among the slow and painful deaths that characters have experienced, there are a few that stand above them all. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Amanda. Today we'll be taking a third look at some of the absolute worst ways to die in Marvel Comics. So let's not waste any time and let's dive right in. Number 10. Mark of Cain. Of the most gruesome ways to go, I think one of the worst would be to get Mark of Cain. Cain marked? I don't know if that's really how we say that, but sure. We can say it either of those ways for now, because I don't know what else to call that. Cain Parker is a clone of Peter Parker, of the two main clones we know from the Clone Saga. He was the one who was actually more dramatic and broody. He had long hair and for a while was more of an antagonist, or at least believed to be so. Cain was also known for straight up killing people that got in his way, with his Mark of Cain. What is the Mark of Cain? While initially we kind of thought it was like its own ability, it's actually just Peter's like little hooks that he has on his hands which allow him to stick to stuff, which we actually see in the Raimi-verse pretty close up. Cain would basically put his hand on someone's face and then turn on this sticky ability, which resulted in him seemingly burning the face of his victim. I mean, I don't know if this would actually kill you, but I feel like if this was at all involved in the process of Cain killing me, I would not be interested in that at all. Unless I guess I was already dead. Then I guess I'd kind of be fine with it, because I'd be like, well, I'm not here to feel bad, so cool. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe? I know there's a lot of you out there that aren't subscribed, and if you're already subscribed, let me know in the comments.
Number 9. Man-Thing. In 1971, Marvel introduced Man-Thing. He was a scientist named Ted Sallis trying to create his own version of the super soldier serum before being attacked by criminals who wanted to steal his work. To keep the formula secret, Ted injected himself with the serum before getting in a car accident that caused his car to crash into a magic swamp. The serum and the magic caused him to transform into a big green swamp monster who was able to control plant life as well as a host of other abilities. One of his powers is to sense human emotion, with him having different reactions to different feelings. Fear sends Man-Thing into a fit of rage, and when he senses it, his body automatically secretes a corrosive acid-like agent that will burn anyone he touches. Hence the series tagline, "Whatever knows fear burns at the Man-Thing's touch." Now, I don't know about you, but if I came across a creature like Man-Thing, it would be difficult not to be afraid. So I really don't know how well I would do, and the idea of being grabbed by such a beast and burned to death because he's mad that I'm afraid sounds like a rough way to go.
Number 8. Torn to Shreds. This was a hard one to rank because while I feel like it would be really awful, I also still feel like there's somehow worse out there in the Marvel Universe waiting for me were I a person. Gosh, that would be terrible. I would hope that I was a superhero. That's the best I can hope, really. Still, this kind of death is pretty much as bad as it gets if we're speaking in general terms than, you know, straight up ranking it as one of the worst ways to die in the Marvel multiverse, which is kind of actually what we are doing here, but still, I digress. It's pretty bad. Deadpool is one of the folks who has undergone this usually life-ending process multiple times. One such time actually happened when he faced off against Carnage, who actually made a pretty dramatic appearance on our part 2 for this series. Of course, Carnage would take this approach to fighting and probably also immensely enjoy it, which it makes it, I think, that much worse. Now, because this is Deadpool, he didn't die here because Deadpool. However, this wasn't even where everything ended for Deadpool, because Carnage also was plotting to burn down the building that this happened in. So Deadpool would have in theory been diced and then kind of flambéed.
Number 7. Absorbed by the Hulk. One of the most feared figures in the Marvel Universe for both hero and villain alike is the Incredible Hulk. Despite his reputation as a giant raging green monster, the Hulk goes out of his way to not be responsible for the deaths of any of the civilians or villains that he has to fight while rampaging through the world. Despite this, it does happen from time to time. In the Ultimate Universe, the Hulk is known for eating people, which is of course a terrible way to go, and getting smashed by the Jade Giant would of course be a horrible experience, but I think the worst way that you could meet your end at the hands of the Hulk is the way featured in Immortal Hulk number 8. In this issue, the Hulk has been captured by a secretive Black Ops organization called Shadow Base. In order to prevent the Hulk from escaping, they have vivisected him into multiple pieces which they keep in separate jars, in order to prevent his healing factor from allowing him to come together and escape. The evil Dr. Clive, who is in charge of the program, is running various cruel experiments on the Hulk in order to fully understand the power of his healing factor. Little did Clive know, he was doing exactly what the Hulk wanted him to. He wanted Clive to run the experiment so that he could learn more about himself, and once he knew what he needed, he controlled his hand in one of the jars to snap its fingers, creating a shockwave that shattered the jars, allowing Hulk's various parts to reform and heal. Hulk took Dr. Clive's treatment personally, and as he reformed, he absorbed the Doctor into himself, causing the Doctor to be smothered by the Hulk's innards as he desperately begged for mercy that wasn't coming. It is a fitting end for such a character, but it's not a fate I would want to endure while living in the Marvel Universe.
Number 6. Ripped in half. Being ripped in half really does not seem fun, and yet for some reason this is a very common way to die when it comes to Marvel Comics. I can't count how many times someone has been ripped in half. I literally can't, because every time I attempt to, I actually think of another occurrence of this happening, and then I have to start all over again. So it's very hard for me to put a number on that one. It's terrible. Or, you know, maybe it's just comics. The one thing I'd really warn against, you know, if you're looking out from us at the Marvel multiverse, is that while living in whatever world you are in, you should basically never do this to another person, be they villain or hero, regardless of your alignment or their alignment. Just don't do it. I've seen this kind of could basically come back to haunt characters who generally also get torn in half by someone else as some kind of like karmic payback, so if you've done it to someone, it's probably coming for you.
Number 5. The U-Men. The mutants of the Marvel Universe have had a pretty rough go of it, being subjected to many atrocities due to the prejudices of the humans that despise them. Usually the humans are convinced that the mutants are dangerous and desire their extermination, so they can take their place as the next step in evolution, which makes the humans try to exterminate them first. Other comics explore how the mutant hate doesn't really make a lot of sense, as the humans will praise the superpowered beings until they find out that they're mutants, at which point they will turn against them. However, some of the humans hate the mutants out of sheer jealousy. For example, the Homo Perfectus movement, which are humans who believe that they are mutants stuck in human bodies and wish to undergo surgery to empower themselves with mutant powers. There was a cult-like faction of the group called the U-Men who swore against ever having contact with the impure world until they had had their powers, and wore containment suits until they could be transformed. The way the U-Men went about this was by traveling the country and capturing mutants who they would then harvest organs and body parts from in order to empower their members. Life for mutants is hard enough, but being captured by an insane cult with a military budget who want to dissect you and steal your body parts in a crazy quest to steal your powers is one of the worst, as it is a painful and demeaning way to go, as in the words of their leader, John Sublime, to them, mutants are just livestock.
Number 4. Dawkin. What's worse than being livestock? Being Dawkin's livestock, I guess. If Wolverine is the best at what he does, Dawkin is the one who simply enjoys what he does a little too much. Dawkin is a trained killer, and we get to see this side of him on full display during his fight against the Punisher during Dark Reign. It was during this era of Marvel that we saw Norman Osborn take over as leader of the Avengers after S.H.I.E.L.D. was no more, and he was basically put in charge of his very own organization, which he named Hammer, an acronym that stands for, well, nothing really. Osborn just liked the sound of it. During this time, working for Osborn, the Dark Avengers were given a list of targets for them to remove, them to get rid of. One such person on that list was Frank Castle. This death is also what we'd call overkill. Dawkin not only tears Frank apart and runs him through with his claws multiple times, but in the end, he also removes his head. Of course, Frank wouldn't straight up die, but instead would later return as the undead Frankencastle, but regardless, I still think this would be a terrible way to go.
Number 3. Miss Arrow. When Spider-Man was killed by Morlun in the Others event, his body was put in a cocoon under the Brooklyn Bridge until he returned to life. He shed his skin, and this skin was taken over by a bunch of spiders, who formed a being called Arrow, who was intent on killing Spider-Man once and for all. Arrow began going by Miss Arrow, and she tried to impregnate Flash Thompson with an egg sac that would give birth to thousands of her offspring, but was stopped by a shotgun-wielding Betty Brant. Miss Arrow tried to escape, but Spider-Man pursued her, eventually managing to force her into the Central Park Zoo's aviary. The various exotic birds were thrilled with the group of spiders before them, and went about eating Miss Arrow one spider at a time as she thrashed and screamed. The birds ate almost every spider, leaving only one left, which Spider-Man promptly stepped on.
Number 2. Sabertooth. While Dawkin and the U-Men are both pretty terrible, if there was one person I wouldn't want to be killed by in the Marvel Universe, it would probably be Sabertooth. Victor Creed is probably one of the most vicious and evil characters we have in the Marvel Universe. Sure, he's done some heroic stuff before, mainly when his alignment was flipped or if we're talking about alternate realities, but this is a man who legitimately revels in violence usually. When he was sent to the pit in Krakoa as punishment, he used this time to kill all the X-Men and heroes he felt had ever slighted him. In his dreams, of course. This wasn't real, but it was still pretty brutal. And when that was done, he decided to create his own hell, and then plot his own escape, even double-crossing the prisoners that he had planned his escape with. Yeah, Creed has to be one of the worst ways to go, hands down.
Number 1. Deadpool's counter to the healing factor. On Earth 12,101, the X-Men grew tired of Deadpool's instability and insanity and had him committed to the Ravencroft Asylum, hoping that he would be cured of his madness. Unfortunately, his doctor was really a disguised psycho man who was using his position to try and brainwash insane people into doing his bidding. He took away the voices in Wade's head, but they were replaced by a new voice that was telling Deadpool to kill everyone. He became aware of his status as a fictional puppet and went on a killing spree of everyone in the Marvel Universe, both hero and villain alike. We get detailed accounts of how he kills the various characters in increasingly brutal and twisted ways, with some highlights being him taking out Thor by growing his hammer with Pym particles so that Thor is crushed underneath it, or trapping the X-Men in an insane death trap. But out of all the fates he subjects the various characters to, I think the worst is what he does to the characters with healing factors. Being a character with a powerful healing factor, Deadpool is uniquely qualified for taking out other such characters, and as Wolverine discovers when he walks into a trap, Deadpool has it all figured out. He has captured Dawkin and X-23 and left them suspended with a computer-controlled flamethrower. The computer keeps track of their vitals, and every time they come back to life and begin to regenerate, the flamethrowers go off and reduce them to skeletons again. So they are trapped in a continuous cycle of being burnt to death, barely coming back to life, and then immediately being burnt to death again, forever.
Any other horrible Marvel deaths we didn't mention here yet? Check out our previous 2 parts and maybe you'll see them there.
Any other lists that you'd like to see? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.